Welcome to the Region Free Gamers podcast. Today we answer the question on everyone's mind. Did anyone ever beat The Wiz?
Welcome to another episode of Region Free Gamers, the podcast fluent in gaming. I will be the Kris Kringle on this magical sleigh ride, the jingle to your balls, so to speak, Anthony Arriaga. However, I'd be nothing without my magical elves, so let's introduce the panel. From the greater north, a man who's not afraid to whip out his moose knuckle. By that I mean he can go right outside and wrestle a moose. Paul Romalo.
Hey guys, happy to be on an episode of Hoarders today.
And down the East Coast we go in a red Ferrari with our Puerto Rican Magnum PI, or as they call him in Puerto Rico, Magnum PI, Arnie Perez.
Yo, I've seen the other side of the virtual world and I love it.
And we will get to that.
I feel like the lawnmower man all the time now.
And then let's keep going down the East Coast. My fellow New Yorker. I mean, if Paul is wrestling moose, then me and this guy were wrestling rats. Or in BK, we're wrestling the hipsters walking the rats because it's humane. Ozzy Garcia.
Hey, I'm wrestling Goombas over here.
What's the sign? Get out of forget about it?
Forget about it.
Forget about it.
Hey, I'm walking over here.
And finally, man, nothing better around this time of year than a gingerbread man. And we have the next best thing. Mr. Jeff Ivets.
Hey guys, that's great. That's great. Well done. Yeah, I don't know how to reply to that.
Got him.
But before we get started with the episode, we just want to thank all the listeners because we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the listeners. You know, thank you so much for your continued support. Please continue to spread the word. If you hate us, recommend us to your worst enemies. If you haven't already, please slide down that chimney and line down that subscribe button and leave us some reviews under the tree.
If you can't tell by now, this is a very special Christmas episode. Even though it has nothing to do with Christmas. But it will. Just wait and see.
I demand more Christmas puns.
It'll all make sense.
I can't wait for us to release this after Christmas.
Yeah. This is coming out in like February or something.
I'll look like a fool.
Well, we're just going to add a ton of Christmas bells to this episode.
Regardless. This thing will come on around Valentine's Day. Bells.
But we're actually about to get a snowstorm. Both Artie,
my Lord.
Anthony, and myself. So
Yeah.
Right.
Paul has been in a snowstorm for the last 3 months.
You know what we have, dude? We have ice. We had a lot of snow, and then we had a really big melt, but it was still hovering around freezing. So like I get to work and the parking lot is like a rink. It's ridiculous. I've never seen it like that up here.
I don't even want to tell Paul how much is supposed to snow on this snowstorm because I know he'll just make fun of me.
Yeah, that's correct. Quickly and mercilessly.
I'm still stuck at grade school. Every time it snows, I'm like, are they going to close work?
But you know, the upside of living in the Yukon is that out of all of us, Paul is the one that's most statistically likely to be found 20,000 years from now. So
That is fair.
perfectly preserved.
Amazing. Oh, that warms my heart.
Yes.
Did you guys, so we just, as of recording this, we're just like a few days out of Black Friday.
That's right.
And I don't know about you guys. I kind of just went a little crazy. I think, I swear, like, I think a 3-day Coke binge would have been a lot more cheaper and feasible. I know you guys were way more reserved, but like, I don't know, man. Arnie, talk to me. What did you pick up for Black Friday?
Not a Switch. This is Arnie's last episode, by the way.
No, bro. I decided that I was going to go to Best Buy at 1 a.m. because in my mind, it somehow made more sense to do my shopping at night than not have to get up early in the morning. So I managed to go there. This is something that, like, I've never been a huge Black Friday person, so I've never had to do this. I had to actually wait in line outside in like 30-degree weather, and I was like, this sucks. Like, why does anybody ever do this? And then I realized that everybody else is just drinking. So everybody else is like smashed, and I'm like the only sober person, and I'm like, oh, that's why. This is why everybody else is like having such a great time. But I managed to get in, and I got me the PlayStation VR bundle, which is pretty much the only thing I wanted out of this entire Black Friday. I got like the last one in the store too. It was one of those where I went to the section where it was and it was empty. Well, it had the shittier bundle where it was like you get the camera and the Move controllers, but you only get 2 games, and this one just has the camera, but it has like 5 games. And then I went to another section when I was on my way out, and I saw it just like sitting there. And I was like, this is mine now. And then I had to make an even longer line. I had to wait. I think I waited longer to pay than I waited outside.
Oh, man.
There was like, the line was so long. There was a guy with like a 10-foot pole that just said line starts here.
Yeah.
So you would know where to go when you wanted to wait in line.
like a tourist in New York.
That's right. Exactly.
Yep.
Just like that. So I got the VR bundle. I got Dragon Quest 11. I got Judgment. And I got Yakuza 6. But then when I got home, it was like smashed to bits. Like what's that? The Essence of Life edition, the one with the art book, basically.
Oh, you got the. Okay, I got you. Yeah.
But when I got home, I was like, I took everything out, and I just heard like jingling inside of it. And I was like, oh shit! Like I thought the disc was loose, and then when I opened it, it just sits on this big plastic tray, and it just looked like somebody had taken like a hammer to the top of it. And so, like, I opened it, and like shards of plastic just fell out of the thing. So I was like, oh, this is great. So I went to Best Buy, and they couldn't find me another copy. So I just got a refund. But then I went to GameStop because I'd already tried my VR out, and I was like, I need more VR stuff. So I went to GameStop, and I did their 2-for-1 sale. So I got Gungrave VR, which I have not played yet, but looks incredibly stupid. So I'm very excited. I got this From Software game called Deracine. I'm sure I'm pronouncing that.
Yeah, no.
Ozzy's mentioned that to us before.
Yeah, Deracine.
Yeah, and I've played a bit of this, and this is actually pretty cool. I kind of like this, but I had to buy the Move controllers, which brings me to my rant of the day. So I need to understand how the fuck like Move controllers that I used to see for like $2 at the thrift store are now $30 each used at GameStop. I need to understand the logic on that one.
Well, I mean,
I can explain.
It's pretty simple, dude. Yeah, Paul.
Yeah. People didn't want them before, and now they do.
This is so stupid.
No. It's just market economics, Arnie.
I was so pissed.
Yo, but is Sony not making anymore? Like, I don't understand. Like,
no, they're making new ones, but the PlayStation 3 ones are still compatible with the VR.
Yeah, those are the ones I have.
Listen,
even
Arnie,
the original ones. Yeah, I didn't jump on this train. Clearly,
it was released in 2010 as the PlayStation Move, and no one cared for it then. And then by 2013, there was no use for them. And then eventually, PlayStation decided to reuse their old technology, which was genius on their part. For real. And they were able to revive a technology that was basically 7 years old at that point, and now it's 9 years old. So
this, to me, is like if Red Octane was like, here's a new Guitar Hero game that's backwards compatible with every shitty guitar controller we've ever made, and now we're going to sell those for $70.
It's not the same, Artie. I know you're pissed, but it's not the same. Just stop whining.
I'm so angry.
So what about you, Ozzy? I'm sorry, Arnie. You still not done with your rant? Jeez.
No, I'm done. I'm having lots of fun with VR. I played Astrobot. I was very happy. I feel like a child again. All I want is more VR games.
For real, it's a very happy game.
Yeah, yes. I picked up a few VR games myself. Gungrave actually is on sale, and I was like, wasn't sure if I should pull the trigger on it. But I was. Just
and then I did manage to pick up Yakuza 6 again at GameStop. So that's a happy story.
So what about you, Ozzy? I know you picked up the bundle.
Yeah, I saw Arnie and I was so pissed that he didn't get the Switch bundle that I just like went out and had to get the VR bundle myself, just to spite him. But strangely enough, I think the VR 5-game bundle, which I think was probably the best deal this Black Friday. It's just you get the PlayStation VR and you get 5 games, including Skyrim VR, Astro, which is probably the best game for PSVR out right now. And I went to GameStop, all sold out. Best Buy was all sold out. And then I decided to go to this really shitty store that I hate to go to called PC Richard & Son. It's everything there. It's one of those stores where everything is overpriced. And they sell you a 1-year-old game as a brand new game.
Yeah.
It's that type of store. But I said, you know what? Screw it. It's a little bit out of the way, so I might as well just walk a little bit further and see if they have anything. When I go over there, they have just this one stand, and there's just games. There's no PlayStation VR or anything. And I'm like, you know what? I mean, let me just ask, just in case. And I'm like, hey, do you guys have the PSVR bundles? And they're like, I don't think so, but let me check. So they go back there, they go back to the warehouse, and they come back. It's like, okay, we have 2. And one of them was a Blood and Truth bundle with the Move included, which is $250. And the other one was a 5-game bundle, and they're like, this is the last one. It's like, I want that one. Right there below, the 5-game bundle one. And so for a moment there, he hadn't told me the price, and I was like, this fuckers are going to sell it to me for like $300 watch.
Right, yeah, right. I would have been thinking the same thing. Write up their ticket.
Yeah, but it was MSRP it actually was for $200. And so PC Richard & Son, which always disappoints, actually came through this time. And so I got that. And I started checking out all the various games, and I started checking out some of the games that I already had and had not played on VR, because I had gotten VR sometime back and then gotten rid of it again. And so I realized that Wipeout, the Omega Collection, has PSVR support. And let me tell you, if Arnie was a kid, I was literally just through the looking mirror, basically. I basically just fulfilled all of my life goals that night of, driving an anti-gravity ship,
all right.
essentially.
I'm glad you clarified.
Yeah, so it was fantastic. I'm really looking forward to spending more time with VR. I might just forget about eating and all those other things that you need for sustenance.
Overrated.
Yeah, overrated. But yeah, that's about what I got.
Yeah, the PSVR, man, it's been like, even my kids, they wanted me to get the VR out again because I had put it away, hadn't been using it, and I took it out yesterday for them, and they were on it like all day, and I was just like, damn youth, huh? They was just playing VR all day. Like, I'm like, I can't even watch a Netflix movie for 3 hours straight. These dudes are over here on VR all damn day, man. Crazy. Like, PlayStation really did their thing with the VR, man. I have to give them credit for that. They really,
yeah, me too. I'm surprised it has worked out as well as it did. Because anytime like a company, I mean, look, the Move, the Kinect, the track record's not great, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, man, VR. I bought it last year, Black Friday, and I don't know, man. I have no regrets, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, except for playing Drive Club VR.
Drive Club VR can suck me, honestly. Like, that's the most, like, the barfiest game I've ever played. That was unbelievable. What an experience, man. Like, within 1 minute, I was gonna hurl. It was awesome.
Yeah.
So I guess we all agree that the VR bundle was definitely the best thing on Black Friday. I think right?
So.
Yeah.
For sure.
Have you guys noticed any of like the worst Black Friday deals that you've seen?
Yeah. In my local EB, they had the EB flyer, and it's the Black Friday flyer, and they had Link's Awakening featured at full price.
Yep, that'll do it.
I'm like, why is this even in here? I know, like, you're wasting my time. Are there that few deals on the Switch?
Yeah, pretty much anything Nintendo related. That's the worst deal.
Well, actually, that's exactly what I had on my list. So, like, I just wrote on my notes, I wrote worst Black Friday deals, and I just wrote Nintendo. Like, I was just kind of like, so all their 3-year-old games are priced at like $40. Like, wow, thanks Nintendo for this great deal. But then the worst offender to me is Donkey Kong Tropical Freeze. Because that game was a Wii U game. Now it's a Switch game, and it's still $40. How like 8 years later?
Well, it's the same thing with New Super Mario Bros. Switch or Deluxe Edition or whatever it's called now. Yeah, you could probably get those games for like $10-15 on the Wii U, and you wouldn't be losing anything by doing so.
Yeah, exactly. It's the worst, man. But I went a little too crazy. Especially me, we chat, and then every time like Ozzy would be like, "Oh yeah, this game's on sale." I'm like, "Oh really? Let me go." I was like tapping the vein every time somebody told me about a sale. I'm like, "Oh, time to wrap up. Let's go." But I hadn't really bought anything all year. Like I literally said the entire year, like I'm just gonna wait till Black Friday. I guess that's what happens when you get older. Black Friday in February doesn't seem that far away. So I was just
It's true.
It's right around the corner. And I know Paul had mentioned this on a previous episode, but like I'm not gonna have much time to play the games I have now. So why not just wait to get them on sale later? You know?
Yeah, exactly.
And I wound up
pretty much. If I'm not going to play them, I might as well just pay less.
Right. I wound up picking up, like I wanted to play Days Gone, but I never picked it up. But I picked it up for $20. I'll pick it up, you know?
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, man. So I guess, Jeff, what about you, man? I didn't hear, you were kind of quiet for Black Friday, right? You kind of stayed close to your hips.
Yeah, that's it. I work in retail. That's like my main job. So I see maybe I see through it a bit. Also, I'm over in Europe, right? So Black Friday, we've been adopting it year on year more and more. Mm-hmm. And like I see through where I work how they structure the deals and how they're basically trying to engage with the customers at the right point and trying to bring in customers or bring in sales. But I'm a little bit like, as much as I'm in retail, I'm also very skeptical or very curious about the mechanisms that go on behind all of this. So when you get this major research that says, of all these items that we've tracked, they're actually cheaper 4 or 5 different times through the year than they are at Black Friday. But Black Friday is this big commercial promotion where people think they're getting a good deal. So I'm like really like kind of going behind the reasons why they're doing it. And it's like, I'm not like a massive like cultural person, but for me, Black Friday is a very American thing. The idea is that companies use it to finally get into profit because they struggle all through the year. But like now like over here, like everyone's going Black Friday or Singles Day. And in Holland, it's like 10% off. It's like, like that's it, or maybe like 30%, and that's on really bad stuff. So like I just get the feeling like people are using it here to try and entice people, but we don't, like the offers aren't as crazy here. But in the UK, things are getting more and more like North America. So that's when it's like, right, I'm just gonna, if I want something, I'll pick it up, but I'm not desperate for stuff, you know.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I was actually really curious, especially being on Instagram. You assume that Black Friday is just related to North America for the most part, you know? But it's interesting to see it being adapted around the world now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's spreading like the plague.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yep, it is. And that's the thing, even though like say Amazon in every country run it, but they also have Prime Week, they also do Singles Day. So it's now you're just around the world, you're being bombarded from every country's different type of promotions. So it's really hard to tell as a consumer, actually, when is the right time to buy something.
Yeah, I mean, I think that now Black Friday is just a marketing ploy. I think it probably was all along, but it wasn't as blatant as it is nowadays. I mean, there are so many markdowns, as you said, Jeff, throughout the year that it doesn't really make sense to wait for Black Friday. There are some good deals, such as the PSVR bundle that we just talked about. But as I was mentioning to you guys out of the pod, that's probably because Sony wants to clear some inventory in order to make way for the PS5 next year and potentially whatever they do with the next PSVR. And so it's no skin off their bone, for them to just, sell you this thing, for cheaper and make it look like this shiny new thing. And I think, if they can also create a larger install base for VR and more people that are converts, which, for example, Arnie and I would be, then that's all the better, and it positions them for the next generation. Yeah. So there's always some sort of logic behind whatever deal you're getting out of Black Friday.
Yeah, right.
And it should be. I mean, it's also worth noting that the games you get bundled are digital.
Yeah.
So it's not like they're losing manufacturing costs on making all these games or anything like that. You know, you're getting the physical PSVR, a demo disc, and like vouchers for a bunch of games.
Yeah, I mean, it's still a good deal. It's still
absolutely.
a good deal. Yeah, but the thing is also, I mean, it's kind of that, like logical fallacy where you think, oh, this thing is marked down $300 and now it's just $700. It's like, well, $700 is still a ton of money. And it's $700 that you wouldn't have spent otherwise. So it's the illusion of saving, that really drives Black Friday. So I'm not crazy about it, but I told myself I wasn't going to get anything this year, and then I did.
There we go. So good.
Yeah,
I was doing so good.
Yeah, but I am really interested in the VR bundle. I've got a load of VR compatible games. I'm kind of like, you made a really good point, Ozzy, on like waiting for the new hardware. If the PS5 is backward compatible and then there's the newer hardware for the VR, I might wait for that unless I get it as a Christmas present, because I have mentioned it a few times through the year. Nudge, nudge, wink, wink, if my wife is listening. But yeah, maybe I wait till then. But like, I'm really jealous of you guys because there's some really great stuff. It's just that I've done some VR like gaming lately, but in kind of VR shops. I don't know the best way of saying it. They're like, But I got because some of the games, the frame rates are so bad, I get nauseous so quickly, and it's just like, I'm not sure if this is a thing for me or what.
Yeah, I think in that sense, PlayStation has done a very good job for the most part, because they have recognized the limitations of their hardware and realized that, look, you got to make this compatible with the base PS4 and the PS4 Pro, but you got to kind of go down to the lowest common denominator. And so, the graphics suffer a bit. They're not as detailed, let's say, as something you would get on a PC. But for the most part, the frame rate holds steady. Something like Wipeout or Drive Club, there might be reasons why you feel nauseated when you play them, but it's mostly because of, the effects it has on your limbic system, not necessarily because of the frame rate. I think that for the most part, they have a pretty consistent frame rate, and most developers have done a pretty good job at that.
Yeah.
But, it's VR is kind of one of those things that you kind of have to feel your own limitations and have to start seeing, how far you can go. Because it does take an adaptation period. I do think that it's not for everyone. For whatever reason, and I do have less of a sense of immersion perhaps with VR, but for whatever reason, I am not nauseated in any way, by VR. And I put Wipeout through its paces. I mean, there were there's a particular turn in one of the tracks that kind of makes me feel a little bit, dizzy, but I mean, hell, you would probably feel this if you were doing that turn in real life. So,
yeah, exactly.
But no, it's if you're like Paul, who has difficulties even playing Mario Odyssey because of the nausea, it's probably not for you. So you kind of have to know what your limitations are.
For sure.
And there are games within those boundaries. There are games in VR that are still very enjoyable. Like the racing games, maybe not so much for someone like me, but there are a lot of games like Astro, Tetris Effect, games that look really good in VR, take advantage of the VR technology, and still, they're not barfy.
They did a great job. The one complaint that people have now are all the wires, but whatever, you don't even notice it while you're playing. And honestly, it's like their first version of it, and it's gonna get better in the future, So nothing really, not a big deal. But now that we've just gone over the paces of the PSVR, let's talk about what we really came to talk about on this episode. And it's about how we started collecting. It's been fascinating to me because if you think about this podcast, it wouldn't exist if it wasn't for Instagram. And we wouldn't have been on Instagram if it wasn't for our video game collecting. And we wouldn't have had a video game collection if it wasn't for our love of this video game media. The Instagram game community is it's really amazing, really. It's brought so many people from all over the world to discuss something that we love. And it's great to really come together and share our gaming passions. Regardless of our favorite genres, we all have that same, we always have that same nostalgic trigger, And what do you think, Paul? Is there something that you saw somebody post about at one point and thought, oh shit, I forgot about that?
Yeah. There's all kinds of stuff that people have posted that I've either forgot about or didn't know at all. Like, I would say probably the biggest thing that Instagram did, I mean, obviously it like destroyed my wallet, right? It's terrible. But I mean, it really got me back into the shoot 'em up genre, right? The vertical or horizontal scrolling shooter, not necessarily the FPS or what have you. And it was really kind of that discovery that was like, okay, I know what I like now in games.
Right.
It's what I've always liked, and I just kind of forgot. So, you know, for example, like the cave shooters, the Xbox 360, for a while, I had no idea that the Xbox 360 was such a monster for shoot 'em ups. And so, you know, through Instagram, I was like, oh, okay, Akai Katana, Death Smiles, Dodonpachi, like all those cave games, and they're great, man. They're of, you know, they are of a style. They're not for everyone. You know, it's all bullet hell for the most part. But if you like it, you like it, and I certainly like it.
Yeah, Death Smiles is one of my favorites too. That I'm in the same boat as you. Death Smiles I didn't pick up until I saw somebody posting about it on Instagram, and I was like, oh. And I had bought it many years ago because it came with. Remember when the 360 had those faceplate changes?
Yeah.
So I had bought it with the faceplate thing. Never played it. Wound up getting rid of it. And then when I saw somebody post about it, I was like, yo, I had that. Damn it! I have to get it again now. What about you, Jeff? Have you had that experience?
Yeah, I think for me, the thing that Instagram kind of inspired in me or kind of instigated in me was a lot of the games that I knew about, but I didn't realize how actually cool they are in physical form, especially because you guys know that I like buying into the Japanese stuff side of things. I'm not like a Japanese expert or any such thing, but when I saw a load of like the Famicom boxes, I'm like, oh my god, like, okay, Famicom or NES stuff, I can leave or take it because they're not like, some of them are simple games, but also just like the 16-bit era is really like my childhood era, so that's where I always gravitate to. But I think that there's a few accounts on here a couple of guys who are based in Japan, and some people who have been collecting for the last 15, 20 years, who just have these absolutely outrageous games that I kind of think, oh, cool. Like even say DuckTales. Okay, cool, DuckTales. I remember really enjoying that. Oh, okay, I'm going to go and take a look and see how much that is. Oh, that's $80. It's like, $80 for a game that is, I can probably just pick it up. I can just download the ROM. And I think that's where I found the balance of like, okay, Instagram and eBay together are making me spend a lot of money. How much of this is I'll get the ROM, and how much of this is I want it because all the manual and the box art and everything that kind of encapsulates around the game, how much of that is appealing? And yeah, so that's where I've kind of fallen down. But obviously, the worst thing is I obviously have exquisite taste, because every single thing that I go for is now like $200, and I'm like, I'm not spending that on a Game Boy game. Like, forget it. But it's like shoot 'em ups, like shmups. It's like that's one of the most expensive genres out there.
It's crazy. It's crazy, especially for Saturn. If you collect it for the Saturn, forget it. You know.
Yep.
But I know I get a lot of DMs sometimes from a lot of people on Instagram that are like, "Yo, check this game out. And I'm like, "Damn it!" They send me the eBay link and everything. They just make it way too easy for me. I'm like, "Damn you."
That's borderline cruel, man. Like, it's one thing to say check out the game. Like, it's another thing to hook you up with the link and
like I appreciate the love, because it's like people know what you're into, you know, and they see something, they get a good sale, and they're like, "Yo, here's the link to Play Asia," right? But then I'm like, without even realizing, I'm like buying it already. I'm like, "Oh, this is great, thanks, man. Yeah, perfect."
Dude, I had a guy in British Columbia on Instagram, Panther Slap. He found Assault Suit Lenos for the PS4 on sale in his town, and he's like, apropos of nothing, he's like, "Yo, you want me to buy you one? I'll mail it to you." And I was like, "Fuck yeah!" And you know, it's super nice. and that's kind of what the community does, right?
Okay, so right, that's a great point right there, because that's another thing. I was a huge fan of Target Earth on the Sega Genesis, and I had no idea that was the same series, Assault Suit Lanos, right?
Yeah,
that's right.
I had no idea. And I found that out on Instagram. And then that just drove me down the rabbit hole. I wound up picking up the sequel on the Saturn, which wasn't that expensive. But then I didn't even know they actually made a semi-remake of the original game for the PS4. I was losing my mind, man.
Yeah.
Love
really
that
good remake, too.
Oh, no, they did a great job. The music, everything is just on point.
Yeah.
On point. Man. So, Arnie, let me ask you a question, man. Are you still with us?
Yeah.
So,
I left to go play VR for a bit.
I know. I was about to say. I was like, did the move get you? No. What's a game that you were influenced to play from an Instagram post? Something that you otherwise would have paid no mind to.
Yeah, it's an interesting question, because I don't think I've ever bought a game. Like, I don't think I've ever seen a post and been like, I definitely need that. But it's definitely like gotten me a lot more curious to look stuff up and like get, more into certain games or certain genres that I would normally touch. But it's usually like having conversations with people about it. Like Yakuza is a big series I'd never heard anything about until I got on Instagram. Trails of Cold Steel, 2064 Read Only Memories. I'd never even heard of that game until somebody talked to me about it over Instagram. Yeah. And I ended up picking that up and loving it. Tetris Effect, like all these, there's just a bunch of games that I just wasn't sort of paying attention to until somebody brought them up to me in conversation. And now I'm like, I want to play all these.
Yeah, man. Yep. What about you, Ozzy?
Well, I guess for me, Instagram, what it did was that it reminded me that there's a ton of games that I have always really wanted and that are completely outside of my reach. There are some accounts that, frequently just remind me that, I just kind of missed the bus on a ton of this because I was just too young at the time to really know that this was going to go up significantly in value. If I had known right now, I probably would have already bought them. But, games like the horror games on the PS2, like Rule of Rose, Haunting Ground, Quan, which is from Software, Econite Beyond, all those games are games that I wanted back in the day, but I just didn't really have the disposable income because I was in high school. And it just kind of reminds me that I really wanted. But, for me, I kind of do a lot of the, it's not any bragging or anything, but I do like the legwork myself when I try to look for games that are not necessarily being talked about. And sometimes you kind of hear them, you see them on some Instagram feeds, but not necessarily. You see a lot more Zelda on Instagram feeds. But, which is partly the reason why I haven't been as involved in Instagram lately, because it's just I got tired of seeing Zelda posts.
No, it's okay, Jeff. He didn't mean that.
I know.
Don't click off this podcast. 5-star ratings, please.
Yeah, no, but there are a few accounts that really focus on those hard to find games and or like those even quirky games that no one knows anything about. Like games like Kowloon's Gate. Something which you would not know anything about. That particular era in the PS1. Is very interesting to me because there are a ton of games that we know about that came to the United States, but there are many more games that are completely unknown that never came out stateside. And so that's what I, traditionally focused on. And sometimes it was like, well, I guess I'm not going to be able to play this game anytime soon. But yeah, I mean, Instagram, you have to really know your limits. You have to know that you can't have everything. And I think I've gotten good at that, after about 3 years that I've been in it. Just because if you let it get to you, it's a lot of money, it's a lot of money. And I just hope that, people that perhaps are not as, do not have that willpower are not being led to spend more just because they see what other people are getting. That's kind of what I'm concerned with.
Oh, yeah.
That's 100% happening for sure.
Yeah. And man, I'm really sounding down on this, but it's not my intent. It's kind of like saying that, guys, just, have that sense of grounding of like, this is not something that you absolutely need. It's something that would be nice, but it's not something that you absolutely need. So that's my alienation to our audience for the day.
But I'd like to be perfectly clear that you definitely need PSVR in your life. That's
absolutely.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah,
If we haven't sold it to you enough, I mean, this is it.
You haven't been listening, right?
yeah. And you touched on something really interesting, is that there are people who focus on like the less obscure stuff, and I really like people who focus on like specific systems. Like there's a guy called Panasonic 3DO that all he posts is Panasonic 3DO stuff. I think that's really cool. There's a bunch of TurboGrafx people that do a bunch of like really, you know, dig deep into that sort of minutia and ephemera for that system. Like those kind of accounts are always really fun to follow, because I'll probably never own any of that stuff, but it's cool to see it.
Yeah, absolutely.
One thing I realized is a lot more people have the Virtual Boy than I realized.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Listen, we'll get into that. Because I laugh because I'm just kind of like, when the Virtual Boy was out, no one had that thing. It completely sucked, right?
Yep.
Like no one could play it. Now all of a sudden, everybody's a Virtual Boy fan. I'm like, I want to see you play that shit. Let me see you play that shit.
Number one Nintendo system all time.
All right, fellas, should we take a break?
Yeah. Let's take a break right now. We'll be right back, and we'll start talking about what got us into collecting. All right, everybody, and we are back, and we are having some good conversation here, and we're talking about how we started collecting. I always find it fascinating because I didn't get into video game collecting, or, you know, like, it's not like I started buying video games to collect them. I just loved video games when I was a kid. You know, when I was introduced to them, I loved them, wanted more. I know, as me personally, as a child, I couldn't afford to have multiple systems, you know, so I constantly was selling one console to upgrade to the next console, and so forth and so forth. And I think as the years went on, I just started I just had like a big collection. I don't know if you guys had the same thing, but it was like, people would be like, "Oh, you collect video games?" And I was like, "No, I just got a lot of video games, man. I'm not committing to this collecting thing." You know,
That's a denial face.
Yeah, because it was like weird. I'm like, I don't collect video games. I just have a lot of cool shit. I don't know, you know. I will say, and you referenced this earlier, but I never did say in my childhood, like, man, I really want to get a Virtual Boy. I need that thing. That thing will look great on my tabletop.
Says that.
I figured like I was just hoarding, you know, I figured I was just hoarding video games, and, you know, I felt like, oh, damn, I got too many video games, man. This is crazy. But people would come over and they'd be like, oh, shit, you got this one?
You know,
got that?
Anthony, I can tell you the demarcation line between, you know, just buying video games and liking them and collecting video games, because for me, whatever game I picked up, I wanted to see through to completion. I wanted to play as much of it. And I remember I had a friend once, you know, that he was about 6 years older than me. He had more disposable income at the time. And so, you know, he would buy the games and he would be like, "No, I haven't even opened it after like 3 months." I'll be like, that's insane. Why would you buy a video game and not even open it? And then, you know, fast forward a few years later, and it's like, you know, I started realizing that I was accumulating much more than I could ever play. And I was forgetting what games I even had. And I would look at my shelf and I would be like, "Oh my God, I have that game. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah,
maybe I should play it at some point." And then I never play it. And that's clearly the point where you've gone a little bit too far. That's the point where you know that you are committed to just collecting. And, I actually had that question. Someone came in the other day to my house. And, you know, they saw my bookshelf, they saw my vinyl shelf, and they saw my game shelf. And it was like, "Well, are you a gamer or are you a collector?" And I had to be honest with myself. I was like, you know what? At this point, probably more of a collector. Right. Which, you know, it's a bad word. Like, it's a dirty word in our community, because it's like, well, you don't really play the games.
Man, it's adulting, man. That's what happens.
You know, you don't have enough time and more disposable income than you. It's like Paul said, this is all gearing up for retirement. This is part of the retirement pension.
Yep.
You know, it's like you put away something every month. Well, you put away a game, you know, every week or so that, you know, that it's going to, you know, give you a little bit of enjoyment whenever your legs start failing you.
Yo, listen, man, I'm looking forward to retirement because that's when I'm going to play all these games. We're going to be, it's crazy because this generation and so forth, man, we're going to be like in our 60s playing video games.
We're all going to be dead, dude.
Oh, easily. Yeah.
Ozzy, didn't we just talk about brightening up the episode and you ran away, man? You killed us all.
Yeah. Sorry.
Well, maybe if you get Ring Fit on the Nintendo Switch, you'll live a little bit longer to play everything else.
I got to look that up too now. Shit.
See?
Said the guy with no Switch.
What a fraud.
Well, I'm committed to dying in the virtual world now. That's where I want to be buried. That's where I'd like to have my funeral. Put me in the coffin with the PSVR
they start selling you
on my
virtual
face.
lots.
Yeah, exactly.
Can you imagine they start selling you virtual lots? They have like a perfect 3D recreation of you, and it's like your loved ones can go in there and just kind of see you and talk to you, and they has like, kind of a portion of your identity or something like that.
Oh man.
I'd like to formally trademark this idea in case somebody at Sony is listening to this episode. Do not steal this.
This is a Region Free Gamers original.
This is a hot take. What about you, Paul? Like, when did you admit to yourself, or when did you realize you were collecting?
That's a good question. I don't think there was ever like a specific like marking point where I looked at the grotesque amount of games and thought, because here's the thing, right? There's nothing that I own that I don't intend to play. Am I going to play it? Fuck no. There's way too much in that room for me to play everything, right? And the purchasing has slowed down over time, but that's mainly because I have acquired all the stuff that I actually wanted, right?
Right.
Like the stuff from when I was a kid and so on. All that stuff's on the shelf. I look at it, it warms my heart, and maybe once in a while I'll play this stuff. So yeah, I don't know if there was a specific point where I would say I'm a collector, over a gamer. I just have a lot of games that I really like. And listening to myself talk now, I am clearly in denial. Like,
yeah, absolutely.
I'm listening and I'm like, dude, there's no way you're not like, a quote unquote collector. But I guess it can go both ways. The bottom line is when I look at people and, you're trying to like label them, collector, gamer, whatever the case may be. The turning point is when I see people with a ton of bad games, you know what I mean? Just in order to have a shit ton of games, when they go quantity over quality, when I see that, I'm like, yeah, this person's collecting, right? But when I see fewer games of higher quality, then there's room for interpretation, but I'm still in denial.
Well, I'll give a caveat to that, Paul, because as you guys know, I've just started collecting bad games. Genuinely, because I am curious about these bad games, and it's become kind of an obsession with me. And to be honest, out of the games I picked up over the last 6 months, I would say 80% of them are probably what are categorized as bad games.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's almost like an archaeological dig for me. I want to explore what makes a bad game tick. But your point is well taken. Like, there are people that just have a lot of drivel. There are just people that just have the entire Wii collection. And that's insane, because there's so many bad games there. Games like, Babies, Whatever Are Us or something, that
classic
have...
I think there's a difference between like entertainingly bad and just bland.
Yeah.
I think there's a difference between something like, I don't know, Duke Nukem Forever and like my cooking coach on the DS or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. With that said though, I had this, perverse desire to purchase the quit smoking coach for the Nintendo DS. I saw it for like
like that.
Yeah, dude. They have obviously it's not going to work, right? But like, I guess that's not the point. It was like $5, and I was like, I kind of want this because it's $5 and it's hilarious. And when I look at it on my shelf, it's going to make me laugh. But then again, I was like, shelf space is limited. I don't want to turn into that guy. And the box had a little bit of damage too.
Yeah. That's what it was. It was in pristine condition.
No, but like you made a point though. Like I think once, like when I was growing up, I had like I wouldn't go back and buy a console that I never had. Just to start.
Exactly.
Like I just because it doesn't resonate with me. Like there's no connection with it. Like I remember when I had my NES, I sold that to get a Sega Genesis. When I had my Sega Genesis, I had the Sega CD, the 32X as a kid. I sold that to get a Sega Saturn. Once I got a little older, like when I was making my own money, I just felt that connection to go back and buy those old consoles that I had.
Yeah.
But I guess to me, that's the only way I would, that's I guess to me, without realizing, that's when I started collecting. That's when it started becoming a thing where I had to reconnect with my past. These are things that influenced me, that made me love gaming, and I didn't have enough money, so you were always trading up. It's a funny thing because that was a thing when I was a kid, just trading up to the next console. There was no emotional attachment. It was weird because you loved the games. You loved the hell out of those games, but when that new stuff came out, you were like, bye past.
Exactly. If you've completed it, then what further value does it have?
That's right. That was
you want a new experience. You don't, That's it.
Yeah. Ninja Gaiden 1 came out. Ninja Gaiden 2 came out. Got rid of Ninja Gaiden 1. Let's get Ninja Gaiden 2, And then you get older, you're like, I want the whole collection. I want to look at it on my shelf. And I'm okay
And
with
then you
that.
look at the price of Ninja Gaiden 3 and cry a little bit.
Oh, God. Yeah, that hurts me because I had Ninja Gaiden 3 when I was younger. And I was like, damn.
Yeah.
Ouch. Yeah. That hurts me. So, Jeff, let me ask you a question though. What's that we were talking about consoles and whatnot? What does like your gaming tree look like? Like what was the first console you had to, how did that start for you?
Yeah, my first console was the Game Boy. I guess if you want to call it a console, but that was my first introduction into everything there. I got that because my dad managed to bring one back from Japan when they were still in high demand in the UK, very hard to get. So he managed to bring one back one Christmas. And I quickly then got into the Sega Master System. So Sega, as you guys would have covered here before in previous episodes, Sega was huge in Europe. So the Master System and the Mega Drive or the Genesis were just like everywhere. So that was an easy thing for me. So after the Master System, you went Super Nintendo, PlayStation, and then after the PlayStation, so and I'm the same as you, Ant, where I had to trade everything. So the Master System was sold at a car boot sale. Then I managed to get a SNES for Christmas, but then all the money from the Master System went into all the new games I wanted, and it went on for the PlayStation. So it's like, okay, I had to constantly trade up, and that kind of always. It's good because it gives you a sense of what things are worth, and it gives you a sense of, okay, I treasure what I've got more now because I've had to give up something I love to get something new. And that's something where you guys are talking about, like, okay, when you go back and you're going to go, I want to pick up the stuff I used to have in my childhood. I've fallen into that. I would call it a trap. But I've fallen into that as well. But I've just found, like, man, once again, I had exquisite taste as a kid because everything I want is now $200. It's like, so that really obscure racing game by Tonkin House on the Game Boy called Roadster, which is like super simple top-down racing game. If I want that with the Game Boy box, it's $200. And it's like, but my dad just gave that to me as a Christmas present. Like, it was just a normal game. So I've unfortunately I go down that, but yeah, I always felt that everything I had, I felt like a piece of me I had to give up in order to get something new, and it's just something you had to deal with.
Yeah, that was just the way. That was gaming economics 101. Yeah. That was it.
Yep.
What about you,
all
Arnie?
of that? I feel. Sorry, but I feel like that's disappearing because the value of games disappear like that. So it's like now when I go around to my nephew's place, he's got stacks of games. He's definitely not a collector, but they're not worth anything. Yeah,
it's like you can't sell it. You're not going to get anything for it, Yeah. We'll definitely get into that a little bit later, though.
A corollary to that is all the games we gave away to GameStop or EB Games or whatever the case may be for like dimes, essentially.
Don't remind me. Don't remind me, please.
Yeah, in order to get the shiny new thing. And it's like, how many did you get rid of that you were basically suckered. You were basically ripped off.
Yeah.
So many kids, and whenever I see a kid doing that with their family at GameStop or something like that, I really have to restrain myself from like going there and just having an intervention. And being like, kid, you're gonna regret this at some point later on the line. I don't mean it right now, but at some point later, you're gonna have very, very, very deep, resentful thoughts about this moment right here.
I think I disagree with you, Ozzy, honestly, because here's the thing. If as a kid I didn't have a GameStop or an EB, and for us it was like smaller mom and pop shops back then.
Yeah.
But if we didn't have those places available to us, I would have played about 10% of the games that I actually did end up playing over the course of like the 8 and 16-bit eras. And so while I look back and there are games that I wish I hadn't got rid of, at the same time, if I hadn't got rid of those games, I probably wouldn't actually be as into the hobby as I am now, just because I got to play so much more of it. So, I mean, yeah, you can say they're ripping off kids, and there is a degree of truth to that. But at the same time, they're providing a service that, in retrospect, I think is very valuable. It's there's push and pull is what I'm saying on that one. It's not entirely negative.
No, I agree with that, and I think it's probably gotten worse over time, because they've had to maximize like shareholder value and stuff like that, and so they give you even less nowadays. But I think back in the 90s, you would still get a pretty decent, return, for your game. I mean, yeah, as soon as you bought it, that game went down like $20 in value.
Sure.
But, if you play a game, let's say it's a short game, let's say you play, I don't know, Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers, and you're like, okay, well, I beat Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers, and it's like, well, okay, let me just return it. It's almost like a rental at that point, a $20 rental. Yeah. So, but I did get ripped off quite a bit, and there are games that I gave away that I just, to this day, I regret giving away.
Yeah, they had here. Me and my friends would go to Queens, and they had these flea markets, right? And they always had like a gaming booth somewhere, and we would go in. That's where we would go trade in our games to get the new stuff. And I'll never forget this. And it hurts my heart a little bit just thinking about this. But when let's say I would go in with a Sega Genesis game, I'd bring it in to trade it in for something. They would throw away the cases. They would just throw away the cases and just sell the cartridge.
Yeah.
I was like, oh man, like that didn't bother me back then. But now I think about it, I'm like, oh my God, that's it. It's it's never going to be complete in box. That's it.
Can you imagine how many Panzer Dragoon sagas are out there in landfills right now?
Oh man, oof. Let's not even go down that dark road, man. Let's not do that. Nah.
And I will say, in at least in my experience in giving stuff away, trading stuff in, I personally only really regret a handful of those. Like, I regret Batman and Robin on the Sega Genesis. Do I regret Mighty Max? No. I regret Road Rash 2, maybe. But there's like a good chunk of games that I don't even think about anymore that I gave away when I was a kid.
Right.
Yeah.
But like, I mean, is there at a point, do you ever feel like even for a second that you have like a seller's remorse, like if you got rid of a console or anything, Arnie?
Oh yeah. Oh, there's definitely been times. I think because what happened was I didn't trade a lot of my old stuff in. I actually held on to it for a long time. I just never used it, and eventually my mom just gave it away. Like when I was much older.
Oh, that's so much worse.
Yeah. And then shortly after is when I got into video game collecting, and I was like, where the fuck? Where's my Sega Nomad? Where's like my Super Nintendo? It was just gone.
Damn.
Oh my.
And there's some clown on Instagram posting his like garage sale find that he found at your place. Look at this. I got a Sega Nomad for 50 cents and whatever, dude.
On the bottom it says Arnie's Toys.
Yeah.
There's just a scrawled on there. Oh god. It was it's very interesting. Like that sort of phase that you go through, because it's one of those things, right? If I had never gotten into this hobby, I wouldn't even think twice about it. And the fact that now I'm I'm in it.
Yeah.
That's like a big moment where I'm like, fuck, I think back on it and I think of all the cool things I had. But as a kid, like I remember my great grandmother's like neighbor had a kid who was growing out of stuff, and they dropped a box off at her house, and it was like a Super Nintendo with like 3 controllers, Super Mario Brothers All-Stars, like a whole bunch of games that I got to play for free, you know? So I think it's like you comes around, goes around, right? Like I think as a kid I benefited from that, and then as an adult it came back to bite me, you know? But like Paul said, it's one of those things where you experience it, and the experience of it is ultimately more valuable than having the actual game.
Oh, for sure.
Maybe not monetarily, but like from the perspective of getting into the hobby and sort of enjoying playing video games.
Right. And Paul, let me ask you, what was the last thing what was the last console that you remember trading in to get another console?
You guys are gonna laugh at me. It was the Turbo Duo. Yeah, I know, dude. And
no one's laughing, man. No one's laughing.
Yeah, I guess I underestimated you guys. You do have hearts, but yeah, I traded in, and like I had so much what is now valuable stuff for it, and I traded it in for like, you know, peanuts to get a 3DO.
A Nintendo 64.
No, hell no. A 3DO. And like, you know what? Again, it's one of those things where, yeah, that one probably, except for maybe like a couple of Master System games that I wish I hadn't gotten rid of. Yeah. That one, I look back on it and I'm like, fuck, that's really unfortunate. But at the same time, like, I still kind of don't regret it. You know what I mean? Right. Like, the fact is, at that moment in time, I was done with the Turbo Duo. They weren't making any new games for it. I had played all the games that I had to death, and I wasn't going to hold on to something just because it might have monetary value 20 years later. You know what I mean? Like, it just doesn't make sense.
Let me add something to that, Paul, which is that the illusion of value is something that also happens here, because there are people that buy the game brand new, let's say at $60, and they say, well, this game is probably going to go up in value. And then 6 years later or 10 years later, it's like, well, you know, this game is $60. That's one of the more expensive games. But it's like, well, you bought it for $60. And when you take into account the time value of money, those $60 would have been about $85 now. So technically you are still losing money. You know, I mean, yes, you can get deals. You know, let's say that you get a game for like $10 and then it's $200 eventually down the line. But those are rare. You know, those are not the norm. It's really the exception. And people tend to mistake that, you know, notion of value quite a bit.
Yeah, it's like when people buy like launch day consoles and they just like buy multiple ones and store one for later. You know, I've never gotten that. I was like, I can't. How do you even? What are you gonna do with that? You know? How much are you really gonna get for a day one Xbox One? 5 years later, right?
Yeah, because they only made 8 million of them, so you know. It's,
So what we're saying is that we need a little bit more of an economics lesson here for gamers.
What about you, Ozzy? What was the last console that you traded in for another console?
Actually, I mean, I spoke about this on the Dreamcast episode. I actually exchanged my PS1 that was basically going out, and that I could play my PS1 games on the PS2.
Right.
And I exchanged it for the Dreamcast.
Oh yeah,
and
but to
this day,
that was a good deal.
To this day, I still think that's probably one of the best trades I've ever done.
Smart. Man.
I did not. For me, I was not into turning in, you know, consoles. I really, I don't know if you can call it collecting, but I did not like to get rid of my stuff. I, you know, call it hoarding, call it whatever.
That's collecting.
No, but it held sentimental value for me. And that's kind of, it goes back to like my collecting origin story, is that I've never really liked to get rid of my stuff because it all holds some sentimental value. And, you know, like you guys know, I basically had to get rid of everything. I had to leave everything behind when I came to this country. And so it just kind of really informed, you know, my mentality, because I knew what it felt like at a very early age to lose everything that held sentimental value for you. And I never wanted to feel that way again, and so that's why, the games that I have, a lot of them are still from, when I was a kid, the ones that I started collecting after I came to this country.
Yeah.
And yeah, I've given away a few. I mean, I still don't regret giving away the bouncer. I still think that was a very, very good choice on my part, even at that early age. I wish I had kept some like Vampire Knight for the PS2 and stuff like that. But I very quickly realized that, this was not a good thing that I was doing. I could just hold off on getting a new game until, my mom was able to buy it or something like that. But I wanted to preserve that game. And I remember I had, all the games kind of in that, album, where you put the disc inside the album, and I would just like flip through them. I would be like, oh man, this is so awesome. I have this one, I have this one, I have this one. So from a very early age, I just really liked the act of just having them there, even if I didn't play them.
Right.
Because I knew that I could pop it in at any time and just, have it go. Whereas if I had gotten rid of them, it would have been like, okay, well, it's not like I was used to eBay back in the day, so it's not like I could have picked it up easily if I wanted to. So yeah, I'm not one to have traded in much, to be honest. I really just like preserving what I had, because all of it in some shape or form held some sentimental value. God, I mean, I still have NCAA College Football 04 because that's a game that was given to me on, Christmas. And I was like, you know what? This game is probably like 99 cents anywhere. But it's still my copy, and I played a ton of it, and it was like the only college football game that I played back in the day, so I'm not going to get rid of it. So yeah, I guess I don't know. I like keeping, the sentimental tchotchkes of sorts.
Of course, yeah. I think, like even with me, like the last time like I mentioned before, the last time I got rid of it, I stopped with the Sega Saturn. And I don't know if you guys remember, Paul and Jeff might remember this. I'm not sure if Ozzy and Arnie would remember this, but when the Saturn was released and it came out like months early, I know you've all heard of this, but like I was there. Like I was actually walking by a Toys R Us, and they had this. It was May of '95, and they had this big banner on the outside of Toys R Us that said the Sega Saturn is here, with that little bald woman with the weird ring around her head. It was kind of weird. And I just thought, what is happening? What happened? I had just graduated from high school, and I went in, and there it was behind the case at Toys R Us, the Sega Saturn. I was like, this can't be real. This can't be real. And I had just graduated, so I had like graduation money. I threw some of it toward that, man. I still have the receipt. It was $436.
When that happened, we were just getting the Super Nintendo in Cuba.
Yo.
So no, I didn't experience that at all.
Oh, man. That's what I'm saying. I wasn't sure if you guys were to see this happen, man. I was there live, and I was just like, yo, this is it for me. Like, think about that. That was 95 and a $400 console in 1995.
Ouch, man.
Ridiculous, man. And that was just because I had graduation money and I didn't know how to act. I was balling. Oh, man. So let's take a quick break. Shall we take a break here?
Sure.
And we'll come back with some more stories. All right, everyone, and we're back, and we're talking about our gaming past, our collections, how we started this stuff, and I think we've touched on this already, and I think that resonates with a lot of people that collect. But the emotional attachment you have to certain games, even if they're not the greatest games in the world, even if they're just terrible games, there's a connection that you personally have with those games. I mean, like for example, for me, Operation Wolf on the NES. That was a game that I I shouldn't say berated, but I just harassed my grandmother to get me back in the day at Nobody Beats the Wiz, which is a throwback store if you've ever heard of it.
Oh, man. I only know it from Seinfeld. We didn't have those in Canada.
Yeah, the Wiz, yes.
What? This is a real thing?
Yo, it's a real thing. Yeah, it's a real store.
That's amazing.
They didn't really have the Wiz dressed up like they did on Seinfeld, but yeah, it's a real place, man. And it's moments like that just like really resonate with me. Like there's a lot of times where, and we, like, again, we touched on this, but there's limited amount of time you have to game, but there's sometimes something really nice about looking at your shelf of games and looking at a particular game, and it instantly transports you to that moment when you either had that game, played that game. Like another example for me, a real quick one, but it's NBA Live 2004. The reason I love that game and I never got rid of that game is because I bought that game the day my oldest son was born. I had this weird notion in my head that when my son was born, I was going to be home for a few days and I was going to have a chance to play NBA Live 2004. I have yet to play NBA Live 2004 because apparently babies don't let you do that. And before I knew it, I was like, oh, well, 2005 is here. Let's do this, What about you, Arnie? What's a game that you have like such an emotional attachment that like, a game that nobody would even care about mostly?
Yeah, funnily enough, it's NBA Live 99.
Oh, get out of here. Yes.
On the Nintendo 64.
Oh, no.
It was 98 or 99, which was a game. My parents split up when I was very young. And so for that generation, my mom had gotten me a PS1. And then for Christmas, my dad got me a Nintendo 64. I can hear Ozzy sighing heavily right now.
I'll forgive you.
But one of the games he got, I think I got Rogue Squadron, Star Wars Shadows of the Empire, and NBA Live 99. I think those were the first three I got. And that was the only game he would play with me. It was NBA Live 99. And we played it a whole bunch. I used to turn off the fouls so I could cheat and run out of bounds and stuff so I could beat him, because otherwise he'd just dominate me because I didn't know the rules of basketball. But yeah, it's a game I'll never forget because we spent so much time playing it, and just had like a great time with it. It's one of the ones that like really sticks in my mind that like, honestly, if I ever saw it again, I'd probably buy it just for that fact alone.
Yeah, no, I completely understand. I would do the same thing. What about you, Jeff? Is there a game that resonates with you like that?
Yeah, I think I'm going to throw another sports game into the mix. It's funny that we're talking about sports games because no one likes to admit that they like sports games.
I was about to say that. I'm like, oh, now, right?
Yeah. No, so the game that I've still got my original copy, and when I look at it, it transports me back is International Superstar Soccer, which is the Konami game,
yeah.
and that was really like the first truly great soccer game on home consoles. Mm-hmm. And I absolutely obsessed over that. I literally threw my copy of FIFA 94 away just because it's like, well, this is so inferior. I don't even need this anymore. Threw that away, and I got ISS. And it's, we're talking about sentimentality, and there's plenty of games that I've rebought, and I look at them on the shelf, and I'm like, this is the same game, but actually, this isn't my game. This isn't my copy. Yeah. This isn't what I had. So there's definitely a really large kind of imprint on your mind of the taste. I'm not going around licking console cartridges, although I have licked a Switch cartridge just because I heard the rumors. So yeah, no,
sorry, are they true though?
Yeah. Oh my god, yeah, definitely give it a lick. After this, give a Switch cartridge a lick. You won't regret it.
I think I'll pass. I'm just glad to know.
just on the tip. On the tip of your tongue.
This is why we'll all be dead by 60. We do this kind of shit.
But yeah, when you're holding it, it's in your hands. You hold it. It smells like your loft, or it really kind of something that really takes you back. So ISS is that main one, and it was a great multiplayer game. So I had loads of fun with my mates with that one. Yeah.
Well, what about you, Paul?
Well, I hate to do it, but like, there's a reason we're all talking about sports games. You know what I mean? Like, and it's because the fondest memories I find with people in video games, and this is just a generalization, right? There are always exceptions, but like, a lot of our fondest memories are playing games with friends.
Right.
And what games did we play with friends? We played sports games, right?
Yep.
So for me, like the original NHL hockey for the Sega Genesis sits on my shelf, and I love that game. It was probably the first game that I got when I started, not collecting but also collecting. And it's because it was probably the only game, I think. Maybe there was one other, but the only game that I played with my father on a regular basis, because he's an old Portuguese immigrant. He doesn't care about video games. He has work to do.
Yeah.
And so NHL hockey was the one that got us there. He only ever even used one button. Like, he never passed. It was just, he would just mash the C button because that was the button that hit. It was the button that fights, and it's the button that shoots the puck. So, what else do you need, right? So we would pick the Toronto Maple Leafs. He'd pick Wendell Clark. He'd get into fights, and he would laugh. And yeah, man, it's NHL hockey. It's not really, it's not valuable. It's not a game people really think of, but
yeah,
it's a special one.
Yeah, it's funny because when I was a kid, it was NHL hockey, but before that, Blades of Steel and Tecmo Bowl, which me and my friends we would set up, like, draw out a tournament and just play each other throughout like a week span or whatever. And no, that was great because it was funny because we just made it a thing. Like, if they came over to my place, I was the home team, and then we would go to their place and play I was on the road. So it was fun, man. It was man. That takes me back, man. What about you, Ozzy? Like, I know you mentioned something earlier, but what's a game like that just instantly, just bam, takes you back?
So another sports game. No, I'm just kidding.
Don't ruin.
No,
this.
I was actually going to mention a sports game, but then after seeing everyone just said a sports game, so I was just like, okay, well, I probably should change something. But no, there's a game that when I started collecting again, I really wanted, and it's a game. I think for me, I really tried to recover everything I had in Cuba, because it kind of felt like a reconciliation of my past. Mm-hmm. But one of those games was a little known game called Daredevil Derby 3D, which basically plays as an overhead racer, kind of like Micro Machines, if you guys remember that.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
And it when my PS1 started going, because of course that first batch of PS1s were notoriously faulty.
Yeah.
And I had to basically turn that upside down. Paul had to put it on his fridge. We all had our own way of trying to make it work. But Daredevil Derby was one of the only ones that would consistently play. It was one of the only ones that would consistently boot up. And so I dedicated a lot of time to it because it also was a multiplayer game. So, because I couldn't show off any of the other games to my friends and stuff, it's like, well, I hope you like playing Daredevil Derby 3D. It's actually a very good game. So I basically, recovered it as soon as I started collecting again. And it's a game that I hold, kind of an emotional attachment to. But like those, I mean, pretty much almost all the ones that I lost when I came from Cuba, almost all of them I have some sort of emotional attachment to. I pretty much just cherish them just a little bit more because it's like, I was able to recover. I was able to do well enough in life, that I was able to recover what I had lost, except Perfect Weapon for the PS1, because screw that game. I will never have an emotional attachment to that game. And that includes another sports game like Triple Play 99, which has A-Rod on the cover. Another, that's kind of the game that allowed me to really learn about, the MLB and get to know sports teams, because I didn't get that information in Cuba. So, and another thing is, the long box games. I collect PS1 long box games, and a big part of the reason for that is because of the games I had back then.
Yeah.
So something like Need for Speed and Street Fighter Alpha, those were the first two games I had for the PS1. And so, again, those games hold a little bit of extra significance for me. So, yeah.
Now, like, I know, like I mentioned it before, and, Nobody Beats the Wiz, which apparently people didn't even know existed.
I can't believe Arnie didn't know. That's awesome.
That's so funny. I thought it was just a Seinfeld thing. What's the deal? Nobody Beats the Wiz. So, no, but like,
did you in fact beat the Wiz?
Nobody beat the Wiz.
Nobody beats him.
But like, do you guys? Are there any stores? And this will be real quick. But are there any stores that you remember buying games from that are no longer, in business? Paul?
Oh yeah,
tons. Yeah, tons. Like half a dozen or whatever, but tons. I think the big one. It's weird because like they actually basically turned into an online retailer. I don't think their store is open in Toronto anymore. But when I was a kid, it was Video Games Plus. We would take the bus to Video Games Plus, once a week, once every couple of weeks. They had a Neo Geo. You could play $2 or you could pay $2 and play for an hour. And I love that place. And now they're kind of like the premier niche Canadian retailer of games online. So, interesting kind of evolution for them. If they do have a physical store, I don't know where it is anymore. I don't think they do.
Yeah.
What about you, Jeff? Any stores on that side of the pond?
No shops for us. We were a barren wasteland of no, I can't even finish that. That's my British sarcasm coming out. We had we have a chain called Computer Exchange, or CEX, back in the mid-90s, that was an amazing place to go. They did a lot of importing as well, because you guys probably know that PAL territories, we used to get the inferior versions of games because of the 50 hertz and the fact that they're just terrible. So they did a lot of importing from the US and Japan. So that would be your place to go to get your consoles modded, chipped, or whatever. But that was always like a train ride for me to get into London for. So locally we had a shop, and I'm thinking it probably closed in 91 or 92, because I remember when Mario 3 came out. I remember that it was huge in that shop then. Everyone was queuing to play that. And I picked up Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure on the Game Boy, that terrible LJN game. So I really wish I could remember the name. I'm sure online somewhere there's going to be a photo of it somewhere,
Yeah.
But for us, we had some chains. So we had the shops called Woolworths and Argos. So that would be where
we had that. Yeah, we had that here too. Woolworth,
yeah. I think it was here we go with my retail historical knowledge. Woolworths is an American company that then it then exported itself to the UK and Australia. So, but it was different things in different countries. Very, very strange retailer. So that would be where we go. But they've all disappeared. Everything's changed now. So
yeah.
It's all on my high street in my hometown. It's all hairdressers and coffee shops. That's all it is now. So
yeah.
What about you, Arnie? Any old stores you remember?
Babbage's is the one that like jumps out at me in my mind. I think mostly because they sold video games, but also sold like Gundam model kits and other like knickknacks that I always thought was really cool. KB Toys was probably another big one.
Yep.
And special shout out to Blockbuster. They're going out of business sale. Really put some games in my pocket. But yeah, I mean, Babbage's was probably the big one. We used to have EB Games too before they all migrated up north to Canada for the winter. That never ended, I guess.
The winter came.
And all became GameStops.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was mostly because most of my shopping I did in malls. So like the big mall in Puerto Rico had a Babbage's and a GameStop. One of the smaller malls had an EB Games. That's where I would always go, is like those big retailers, and then I'd rent stuff. But those are the ones that really stick out to me.
That's cool. Yeah, man. Yeah, I remember those. The malls definitely had all the Babbage's. I used to get confused. I thought they were all the same store at some point.
Yeah, and I could never pronounce it correctly. Like everybody I asked pronounce it. It was Babbage's, Babbage's. Babbage's. I was like, what the hell?
Every time I would pronounce it, I felt like I was stuttering. you know?
Yeah. Exactly.
So I just stopped. I'll be like, yeah, that store there, that one.
I'm going over there.
Over there. What about you, Oz?
The same thing as Arnie. Babbage's, which is how I pronounce.
I've never heard anyone say Babbage's. That's new to me.
Babbage's? Yeah, I don't know.
You gotta understand that we're also like in our brain. It's like, how do you say it in Spanish?
Oh,
Yeah, it's
yeah,
like-
yeah.
Okay.
Babbage. Like, it's really weird.
Yeah, that's also another issue there. But no, I mean, I guess Toys R Us was also a big one.
Oh, yeah,
Oh,
of
yeah.
course.
I
yeah.
would just go out to the game section and I would just look upon the shelves, and they were all behind glass. And
You had to get your little ticket, right?
Yeah. You have to get a ticket.
yeah. And so I have a lot of good memories of going on the weekends with my cousins, just to check out, Toys R Us. And I remember that with Toys R Us, you could actually change the game, for full price. So sometimes we would just get a game and then just play it, beat it, and then go back the next day and be like, hey, yeah, this game wasn't that good. So, can you give us another game? They were like, oh, okay, cool. But you can't.
Statute of limitations on that expired, or
No, I don't think they realized that they were losing money on that.
Jeffrey's gonna come to your house and
That's probably why they went bankrupt. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of sad that now the only thing out there is GameStop, and those are about to go out of business sometime soon.
yeah.
So we have to just welcome our Amazon overlords at some point.
Yeah, I remember like we had Toys R Us. What was it? Funko Land was there for a little bit.
Yeah.
I
never got to go to Funko Land. That was a purely American
Yeah,
one.
Funko Land, it was a fun place to go inside to visit, But it was weird when you try to like get games and stuff. I don't know. I don't remember buying too much from there, but I just remember like being a nice place to walk into, Toys R Us, I love Toys R Us because they had the tickets that you'd have to bring up to the counter, and then you'd pay, and then you'd have to go to the front counter, the front booth, so they could get your game.
So they could open the vault to let you have it.
And then they had like, it was funny because I don't want to incriminate myself, but at one point, me and my friend had a system, and we wound up with a lot of Jeffrey Bucks. I had a lot of Jeffrey Bucks, man, Bucks. I don't want to really talk too much about this, but I will say that one time I went into Toys R Us, I forgot I think I went to buy a PS1 or no, it was a PS1. I went to buy a PS1, and I took out a wad of Jeffrey Bucks. Like, I literally paid for my PS1 and still had a wad that I put back in my pocket, and I'll never forget the look that woman at the counter gave me. Like I was like some Jeffrey Buck drug lord. And
you and Ozzy are just running Ponzi schemes on Toys R Us. Like,
yeah.
There was some stuff going on, man, but
She can't say no though, man. You got the cash.
I
listen, Anthony's just saying there may be some kids buried under the blacktop basketball court at the high school. Gotta get those Jeffrey Bucks.
Gotta get those Jeffrey Bucks, man.
I forgot about that completely.
Oh, man.
For those of you that don't know, Jeffrey was the giraffe mascot that Toys R Us had. Just in case
to give
that
you
you're foreign to this
insight.
whole thing. If you're like, who the hell is Jeffrey?
Oh, yeah, right. We should.
I know. Why does he have so many bucks?
We were like,
Stop
everybody's
now.
like, Jeffrey, the butler from the Fresh Prince? Oh, I didn't know that. Actually, should we explain the Fresh Prince too?
No, I think that's pretty universal.
No, you got that. Don't worry.
Oh man. So like even like so as we push to the end here, with collecting being what it is, like is it like really here to stay in the way that we remember collecting? Because the digital era is like in full swing right now. This current gen, like it's not the same retro collecting. Is it gonna hold up? You got service, like really good services like Game Pass. Even me and Ozzy had mentioned that like I bought a bunch of games that are on Game Pass, but they were just on sale, and I have this dilemma because I love having the digital copy, but when you're tied into a service, if that service ever goes away or if you decide to cut off that service, you kind of lose those games. So is the digital services that we're getting now gonna impact collecting going forward, or even like remakes and like remakes of certain games that are like super expensive, but now they remake them in a digital form for like a wider audience to be able to play them? Does that decrease the value of those original physical games? Like, where do you see the collecting going from this point forward? Jeff, what do you think?
Let me just mention, Anthony.
Yeah.
Sorry, Jeff. I think we need to unpack a lot of those questions because there are a ton of things thrown in there that we should probably tackle in each individual part. But, I do think that we're a dying breed.
Right.
We are the millennial generation. In the case of Paul, he's kind of a late Gen Xer, I suppose. But, we grew up with physical media. The people that come after our generation, the I generation or Z or whatever they call themselves nowadays, they don't have that. They don't really have that attachment to physical stuff. Their probably first game was probably on an iPhone, which was not physical in nature. So they don't care about this. But even us dinosaurs that really have a physical attachment to plastic, we're having difficulty changing, one disc to the other because it's too much effort going to your shelf and picking up a disc and changing it. And we're deciding to play the digital version just because, hey, it's too much trouble to like change this. So, our time is kind of, running out. We're not going to go to an age where like collecting is a huge thing. It's going to be relegated to the niche, area that it probably, has always been. But the digital era will continue to proliferate and digital will overtake physical if it hasn't already.
Can I offer a counterpoint?
Yes.
I am never going to underestimate people's need to buy things. So,
but they will buy things, but they will buy them online.
They will. To own things. You know what I mean? I don't necessarily disagree with you, Ozzy. I'll be very interested to see what happens. Really, is kind of the bottom line, right? Because like you are going to have people buying stuff and it's going to be digital and there's going to be services where they have things delivered to their house, and it's not like before we went, shopping for stuff and, blah, 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 blah. But I think the people who grew up in this generation where, like you said, they're getting stuff digital only, it'll be 10 years, or so, maybe less, and they're going to start to have money. And then what are they going to spend that money on? And up until now, invariably, it's been stuff. People just buy stuff. And so, I do wonder if people who, even though they're buying video games digitally, I wonder if they'll be interested in the history and they'll go back and they'll want all the kitschy old NESs and so on and so forth. So one thing I just don't underestimate people's desire for things is what I'm saying.
Well, good luck trying to pick up Flappy Bird 10 years from now.
Oh yeah, you can.
You might have some difficulty doing that.
For me, it's I really look at my parents' generation. I guess I'm a self-confessed collector because my dad was a collector of toy cars from his childhood, from post-war Britain, and he would drive us around the country at the weekends to go to certain swap meets, just because he knows certain sellers who live in different parts of the UK. He was even traveling to the US and Australia specifically to go to swap meets. So
wow.
You never had a chance, Jeff.
I didn't.
You never
ever had a chance. And when I look at like his kind of like his, I wouldn't say how he matured, but definitely like as he grew older, he realized, okay, I've got 200 toy cars. 5 of these are the ones that I had when I was a kid, and the rest I've traded and bought and what have you. Okay, they're worth this much money. I need to now renovate our living room. I really don't need this anymore. And he started to sell off his collection. The good thing for him, he sold them when the people who wanted it were still willing to pay the money.
Yeah.
And And I think now, if you want to get into dinky toys, which is what they're called, sorry, you're going to have to go to visit very specific people who are like, well, it's not really worth much now because the demand has just dropped through the floor. So I do wonder where physical video games are going to go, because dinky toys were a very niche thing for young boys in the 1950s. But video games are cross-generational, and they're also were produced in the millions. Yeah. So
I think we can look at. Sorry, Jeff. I think we can look at comic books perhaps as a comparison. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you can do. Yeah, I think that they're, you know, when you look at, it's all about the value of those, the issues that you never knew existed, but were special edition, were given to certain people. Because I know, say, like Metal Gear Solid, our favorite game here, it's going to win the tournament, I'm sure. But there are special edition packages that were only given to certain people, and you had to get lucky to get one. And now 50,000 copies of a collector's edition gets made, and everyone has to buy it because they think it's what they need in their life. But these really special editions, I guess it's the same thing with the comic books, where you see these pieces which are actually quite special. You're never going to afford it, but you're glad they exist.
Yeah, I think comic books are a little tricky because I don't know how many newer collectors are buying like Silver Age comics or Golden Age comics. You know, I think people sort of, with few exceptions, I think people sort of stick to their wheelhouse in terms of like what they grew up reading and stuff like that. So I don't know if it'll be the same way with video games, where if you grew up playing an Xbox 360, maybe you go back a generation. I don't think you go back Master System or NES, you know what I mean?
I agree, and there are a ton of those older ones. Basically, what I was getting at is with comic books, you have your Action Comics #1, you have your Amazing Spider-Man #1, and I don't think those will ever really drop in value. I think they'll just climb. Yeah. And with video games, you have similar, where you're gonna have, you know, there's like kind of a base price level for most NES titles. I think that those will probably go down, but the premier titles and the ones that they produced very few of, the Little Samsons, the Princess Tomato or whatever it is, you know, those will probably continue to climb regardless. I don't know. It's so tough to say. It's so tough to predict, because Jeff's example about the dinky cars, you know, that's very instructive, but video games are an entirely different beast. I don't know what we can do to. I don't know how we can predict it.
Yeah, exactly. I guess all I'm trying to get into is like, what's the mentality going to be like in 30 years' time? You know, like, so for us guys, where you say like you retire and you've got your collection, are you still going to go, actually, I want to pick up the X, Y, and Z because I always meant to play those? Are there going to be younger generations who are going to be banging on your door going, hey, look, I'll take this off your hands for X amount because this is something that we now realize that we lost out on? Whereas like our generation, we don't care about, majority of us don't care about the toys and the comics from the 1950s. But, you know, I do wonder.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it'll depend a lot on how good certain companies are of keeping their games sort of in the public sphere. Like, I think, for example, Sega does a really good job of always putting out their old Genesis stuff, of making it sure that it's easily accessible. And so if you're a younger kid coming up, if you've never played a Genesis, I think it's normal for you to be curious about Genesis games, but maybe you just buy the Sega Genesis collection. You don't need to buy an actual Genesis and the cartridges for it. Whereas some of this NES stuff that, you know, is not as well curated, or I think Nintendo's trying to do a better job now with Switch Online and all that stuff. Some of that stuff, maybe you're like, well, I really want to play Panic Restaurant, or I really want to play, I don't know, Cobra Triangle or something really random like that. Maybe I go out, pick up a NES and a couple games and see what it's all about. And, you know, Ozzy's been talking about this too. Now you have these clone systems that are really, really good. So maybe you just pick up one of those and you can sort of mess around with that. Or you can hack some of these minis. I mean, there's going to be people growing up now are going to have a million options that we never could have dreamed of. You know, for us, it was physical or die.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, you don't get to play it otherwise. But now people there's so many ways to sort of get around all that and still have an experience that's not just on an emulator on your computer or something.
Right. And I think even to those points, there's a lot of emulators or re-releases that a lot of people would get triggered to buy the original. You know, they play that one and they'd be like, "Ooh, you know what? I want the original. I want the physical copy now." You know, it goes hand in hand. I think it could go cyclical for all we know. You know.
Yeah.
I guess let's just close this out, right? I mean, did we just we sold a lot of PSVRs on this episode. We went down memory lane, which I'm sure we'll get off this episode, and we'll just have a quick tear going down our eyes as we think about our sports games.
Nice cry.
Oh, my Turbo Duo.
I like to think there's a young Canadian boy who bought that Turbo Duo and is now a lifelong TurboGrafx fan thanks to you, Paul.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure. Look, let's not kid ourselves. Our memories are like largely made up, right?
Yes.
But I swear to fucking God, the look on that guy's face at the store when I brought in that Turbo Duo, like he saw that and he was like, and I'm sure he was like, oh my God. And to this day, I'm convinced that the owner of that store still owns that Turbo Duo. But I mean, that.
Did you not notice when his eyes like turned to dollar signs when you walked in?
I wanted that 3DO, dude.
Well, you still got that 3DO?
Of course not. No.
This makes it even worse.
Oh yeah, no, that 3DO. It was the last system I sold.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Because after the 3DO, I got the Saturn, and then after that, I just held on to everything.
Right.
But no, the 3DO, like it had its 9 months or what have you in my house, and I played all the games, like all the 5 games that I really wanted to play on it, and that was pretty much it. Man,
well, hey man, I'm glad we got to revisit these special moments in our lives. And to close, given the holiday season, I'd like to just, I wrote a little something for you guys. Wrote a little poem for our listeners. Aww. For the thanks that they've given us for listening. Here it goes. Excuse me. 'Twas the night before gaming, and all through the crib, while everyone was sleeping, we all counted our sibs. Arnie unwrapped his Persona 4 with care. Paul edits another episode after wrestling a bear. Jeff has his Dreamcast, ready to play House of the Dead. Ozzy objects to his own objection about Red Dead. Super Nintendo, Sega Genesis, the 32X, just another X I won't miss. Connect was a failure, but PSVR has shown us the way. Now it's time to sign off and play some Herzog's Way. So from all of us here, we wish you the best. And I almost forgot to say, I'm from the Briax. Thank you.
Well done.
Jeff.
Merry Christmas to everyone.
Yeah, Merry Christmas, guys. Jeff, tell them what we are, Jeff.
Happy holidays.
We are a gamer.
Listen, if you guys want to find us, you can find us on Instagram. You can find Paul at Pauls_Game Room, Jeff at G-Spot Gaming, Ozzy at Shadow of the Collector. There's a period between each word. Arnie is Welcome to the Game. It's a number 2 in the middle, but you can also definitely find him on the Region Free Gamer podcast page. You can find all of us there on the Region Free Gamer podcast page. You can check us out on Twitter, Region Free Gamer, and our website, regionfreegamers.com. Did I miss anything? Because there's a lot of contact info there.
Too much.
Oh, you can find me. I'm at Polybits on Instagram. Guys, thanks. This was fun, man. I really had a good time talking about all this stuff and crying. And PSVR for the future.
Yeah.
Thanks to everyone.
Yeah, no, it was a lot of fun.
Thanks to everyone for listening, and we'll do better next time. Peace. Now it's time to sign off and play some Herzog's Way.